Come into your seated posture. Cross legs, half lotus or full lotus. Or sitting in a chair, arms by your side, palms on the thighs. Facing up if you need energy from the universe, or palms facing down if you want to get grounded. Taking that deep breath in through the nose as you expand the ribs, filling up the lungs, retaining the breath for a second or two, and then slowly exhale. So you contract the ribs and let out the last bit of breath as you pull that belly button in towards the spine. Starting all over again, allowing each breath to get heavier and heavier as you sink into your personal meditation. Today we're going to continue with part 4 of Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. Highlights. In this section, he talks about which is better, being a big fish in a little pond or a little fish in a big pond. Carolyn Sachs loved science ever since she was a little girl. She sailed through high school at the top of her class. She got A's in every class she took in high school and perfect scores on every one of her advanced placements exam. Summer after her junior year, she went to see Wesley, Brown, Providence College, Boston College, and Yale. She fell in love with Brown University. She applied to Brown with University of Maryland as her backup. She got her acceptance letter a few months later. Did she make the right choice? Brown is an Ivy League, has more resources, more academically able students, more prestige, and more accomplished faculty than the University of Maryland. But the choice isn't about the best option. It's about two very different options, each with its own strengths and drawbacks. She could be a big fish at the University of Maryland or a little fish at one of the most prestigious universities, and she ended up paying a high price. The trouble started spring of her freshman year when she was taking chemistry. She dropped the class and retook it and got a low B. Then she enrolled in organic chemistry. And she never got it down. It was just a feeling of overwhelming inadequacy, she said. If you ranked all the students in the world taking organic chemistry, Malcolm says that Sachs would probably be in the 99th percentile. But she wasn't comparing herself to all of the students. She was comparing herself to her fellow students at Brown. She was a little fish in one of the deepest and most competitive ponds in the country. The experience of comparing herself to all the brilliant fish shattered her confidence and made her feel stupid. Relative deprivation is a term coined by Samuel Stouffer, who conducted extensive military research and found that we form our impression not globally by placing ourselves in the broadest possible contacts, but locally by comparing ourselves to people in the same boat as ourselves. Our sense of how deprived we are is relative. This is both obvious and deeply profound. For example, which do you think has a higher suicide rate? Countries with citizens that declare themselves to be very happy, or countries whose citizens describe themselves as not very happy at all? The answer is the so-called happy countries. It's the same phenomena. If you're depressed in a place where most people are pretty unhappy, you compare yourself to those around you, and you don't feel all that bad. But can you imagine how difficult it would be to be depressed in a country where everyone else has a big smile on their face? Sack's evaluation of herself to her peers was not irrational, but what human beings do. We compare ourselves, and when the contrast is too great, we experience relative deprivation. And when applied to education, relative deprivation is called the big fish, little pond effect. And it matters. How you feel about your abilities, your academic self, concept in the context of your classroom shapes your willingness to tackle challenges and your willingness to tackle tasks. According to research done by Mitchell Chang at the University of California, the likelihood of someone completing a STEM degree, all things being equal, rises by 2% points for every 10-point decrease in the university's average SAT score. The smarter your peers, the dumber you feel. The dumber you feel, the more likely you are to drop out of science. Then he discusses the theory of desirable difficulty. You wouldn't wish dyslexia on a child of yours, or would you? Dyslexia is thought to be a problem in the way words are seen, but it is much more profound than that. It's a problem in the way people hear and manipulate sounds. It may take you a while to learn to read, which impairs your reading fluency, which then impairs your reading comprehension. What do we mean when we call something a disadvantage? Conventional wisdom holds that a disadvantage is something that ought to be avoided, that it is a setback or difficulty that leaves you worse off than you would be otherwise. That is not always the case. Desirable difficulties was coined by Robert and Elizabeth Bjork, two psychologists at University of California. And it's a beautiful and hunting way of understanding how underdogs come to excel, he says. Can dyslexia be a desired difficulty? Except for the strange fact and extraordinary high number of successful entrepreneurs are dyslexic. One thought is that this extraordinary group of people triumph in spite of their disability. A second, more intriguing thought is that they succeeded in part because of their disorder, that they learned something in their struggle that proved to be of enormous advantage. David Boise was born in Illinois. His mom and dad were teachers, and his mom would read to him. He would memorize what she read because he couldn't understand the words. He learned how to read in 3rd grade. He graduated high school, got married, worked as a construction worker, and then got a bookkeeping job. After having a child, his wife pushed him to return to school. Today, he is one of the most famous trial lawyers in the world. Boise started college at the University of Redlands, a small college east of Los Angeles. Going there was his first break, small pond. And he excelled there. Back then, you could attend law school without graduating, so he skipped the core classes. However, he was a very good listener. He learned to do it because that was the only way he could learn. He sat in class at law school, listening, while everyone else took notes, doodled, or faded in and out. His memory by that point was a formidable instrument. He started out at Northwestern Law School and then transferred to Yale. He became a litigator, a job that required him to think on his feet. Malcolm Gladwell says that compensation learning is really hard. Memorizing what your mother reads to you and then reproducing the words in a way that sounds convincing to all those around you requires that you confront your limitations, that you overcome your insecurity and humiliation. Adding that most people cannot master all those steps, but those who can are better off than they would have been otherwise, because what is learned out of necessity is inevitably more powerful than learning that comes easy. Continuing to breathe as you take that deep breath in through the nose. Slowly start to wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Nod your head right to left. Taking another deep breath in through the nose. And gently opening your eyes. Namaste.